Spiritual awakening can happen to anyone, whether you are seeking it or not. It doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, or what you believe. What really matters is when the inner voice calls, do you listen? I know this because that's exactly what happened to me. 10 years ago, I didn't know anything about spirituality. I always loved reading non-fiction and self-help books, but there was one section in the library I used to walk past all the time, and that was the spiritual and religion section. It's not that I was an atheist or anything. Back then, I just thought religion and spirituality were the same thing, and religion just felt very much like traditions and rituals, which I didn't care much about. My religious background was also kind of all over the place. I was technically a Buddhist, but I didn't know much about Buddhism. My mom would ask me to pray with incense or go to the temple, and I'll do it, but no one ever explained why. Then, for most of my school life from 7 to 18, I went to Christian and Catholic school. I had to attend weekly masses and church services, but I wasn't allowed to be Christian. As a kid, I couldn't help but wonder, why did my parents send me to a Christian school just for me to sit there and say no every week? I was actually open to listening to religious teaching, but I wasn't particularly interested. The only thing I genuinely enjoyed was singing hymns like "Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning, burning, burning." However, when people tried to get me to join their religion, I was rather turned off. I remember once telling someone I'm a Buddhist because of my parents, but I'm actually a free thinker at heart. And they replied, "You can't be free from thinking, right?" But in my head, I was like, no, being a free thinker means I'm actually thinking for myself. How is blindly following tradition, rituals, or someone else's belief considered thinking? I want the freedom to choose my belief and let them go when they no longer resonate with me. I didn't want to just follow a fixed set of belief that was passed down to me. So, yeah, I didn't grow up with the best impression of religion. And to me, spirituality was just another version of religion, both trying to recruit me into their communities to boost their numbers. That's why I always skip that section of the library. I thought I've heard enough, there's no need to read about it. However, later I realized that spirituality is nothing like religions. And every one of us will go through a moment when we are called to embark on a spiritual journey. People turn to spirituality for all kinds of reasons. Some people want to end their suffering, they want to find inner peace and overcome their struggles. Others seek happiness and fulfillment. They believe that spirituality can help them manifest their desire and live a more abundant life. Some people are on a spiritual journey wanting to gain more knowledge. They want to use this knowledge and experiences to help them in self-realization and enlightenment. But for me, I didn't care about enlightenment. Even as a spiritual teacher now, enlightenment doesn't really interest me. And when I was struggling with low self-esteem, I actually turned to psychology and self-help instead of spirituality. And before my spiritual awakening, I only knew a little bit about manifestation and the law of attraction. I didn't consider myself as a spiritual seeker. Spirituality wasn't something I actively pursue, but it somehow makes its way into my life. It found me, I didn't go searching for it. Looking back at my spiritual journey, it's clear I was meant to be on this path. During my very first job, I had a spiritual calling. I was an auditor sitting in a client's office one morning, and as I hit the power button on my laptop, I felt like crying. I thought to myself, I don't want to do this, but I have to do this. Like, I was absolutely miserable being in a job that I disliked and found meaningless. I always known I am a creative person. Back then, when I was in the accounting faculty, while everyone else was choosing financial elective to build their careers. I was more drawn to creative elective like filmmaking, singing, lyrics analysis. I even spent time and money learning songwriting and how to play the keyboard. Deep down, I always knew what my heart wanted. I wanted to do something creative. But the people around me kept saying like you can't survive in the creative industry here in Singapore. The pay is very low. So I gave in to the pressure of social conditioning, followed the so-called safe path, and ended up studying accounting like a ship. I found myself in a job I didn't care about, auditing, and I dreaded going to work every day. When you go against your heart desire, you can never truly feel happy or fulfilled. You will eventually feel depressed and stuck like me. At this moment, I realized I have two choices. I could either listen to my inner calling and follow my passion, or I could keep doing what everyone say was the right thing. I chose to listen to my intuition. I'm committed to following my passion, even though I didn't know what I was going to do. But I didn't have any qualification in the arts or creative industry, so I started small. I left my job as an auditor and became an accountant first. Then soon after, I walked past a job fair for the creative industry, and it hit me that wow, I could actually be an animator. I have no idea that it was even possible. That's when I decided to take the leap. I kept working as an accountant while studying animation on the side for 2.5 years. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. At this point, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with spiritual awakening? Don't worry, I'll get to that in a bit. But here's something I wanted to point out. This was the first moment I was called to step out of the 3D world, out of the so-called matrix, the social conditioning, and truly follow my heart and soul. We all get this calling at some point in our lives. You know, the moment where we are asked to follow our hearts, our authentic self, instead of sticking to what's conventional or what society expects of us. But for most of us, fear and societal pressure stop us from answering that call. For some of us, we followed the call for a while, but we got scared and returned to our comfort zone. When I left my auditor job to become an accountant, it was actually super tempting to just stay there. Good pay, stability, fixed working hours, nice working environment and colleagues, everything that I can wish for. Taking a leap into the creative industry, on the other hand, was a huge risk. Longer hours, half of my original pay, starting from scratch again. But I had made a promise to myself. I knew what my heart really wanted, and I couldn't ignore it. Once you're connected to what your heart truly desires, trying to deny it becomes very painful. It's like going against the very essence of who you are. So I went all in, I left my accounting job and become an animator. Then there was a second call. 3 months into my animation job, I sat in my apartment thinking, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. My gut was telling me to leave the animation industry. And I was like, seriously? I just spent 2.5 years studying animation and now you're telling me to quit? What am I even supposed to do next? Like, it felt like some kind of cosmic joke. Looking back now, I can see what the universe was trying to do. It was trying to push me to leave the matrix for good. A 9 to 5 job wasn't meant for me. I am a creator. Even as an animator, I didn't have much creative freedom. I was just doing what I was told to do, following instructions. At least when I was a student, I got to choose what I wanted to create, and that felt a little bit fulfilling. But at my job, I just knew deep down inside I wasn't happy. It didn't really align with who I really am as a creator. At that point, I could have ignored the spiritual calling and say, nope, I'm not falling for this again. I listened to you, my intuition, and it brought me here. Now you changed your mind. I'm not going to listen to you. But yet again, I trusted my intuition. I let my contract end and left the animation industry for good. Then everything kind of fell apart. I hit a major low, what spiritual people often call the dark night of the soul. I have followed my passion, answered the call, and yet I ended up feeling more lost than ever, with no idea what to do next. All my shame and low self-esteem came rushing back, and I felt like a total failure. But here's the thing, that's also when I experienced my first spiritual awakening. Suffering is a quick doorway to spiritual awakening. One day I was feeling restless, fed up with being at home. I decided to take a walk in the park and something unexpected happened. I heard two voices in my head. Both sounded like me, but their vibes were completely different. One told me to jump into the river and be one with it. The other says connect with your purpose. You didn't come here to die like this. Write a book about your experience. I was like, wait a minute, there's two voices. Why are there two voices? Which one is actually me? Later, after my spiritual awakening, one of the first books I read was Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. In the beginning, he talks about this exact same experience. Why are there two voices? And it just clicked for me. I began to notice this gap between my egoic mind and the observer, my true authentic self. Slowly, I stopped believing everything my mind was telling me. Something else happened that day on the park bench. I felt this stillness inside of me. There was also this deep sense of bliss, joy, and connection to the world, a feeling of oneness. I realized how trapped I have been in my own depressive thoughts, so caught up in my own misery that I completely missed the beauty around me. I also realized how deeply I tie my identity to my career. When my career fell apart, so did my sense of self. That day changed everything. It was like someone flipped a switch on, and suddenly I wasn't depressed anymore. I started seeing life from a spiritual perspective. Afterward, I found myself drawn to the religion and spiritual section of the library, the section that I always avoided. I started devouring books on spirituality. At first, I loved reading about spiritual awakening, other people's spiritual journey, then mindfulness, and the law of attraction. As my journey progressed, I became more open to books on energy medicine, angels, and even psychic abilities. If I haven't had those direct spiritual experiences, I would have been very skeptical of all this information. My analytical mind would have blocked it out completely. But because I've been through it myself, everything I read just resonated. Since my initial awakening, the universe kept calling me and I kept answering. Those callings led me to write 7 books. It inspired me to start this YouTube channel. And here I am now, still walking the path, still learning, still evolving, still answering the universe call. So, what have I learned from my spiritual journey? First, you don't need to chase spirituality. It will find you when the time is right. The answers you're looking for, they are already inside of you. When it's time to grow or move to the next chapter, you'll feel it, you'll feel the calling. You don't need to read thousands of spiritual books, join a community, or find a mentor. Like me, I didn't have a spiritual teacher. I just followed the call, one call after another. All those teachers and books, they are just there to help you see what's already inside you, the answer that your ego keeps ignoring. Every one of us is a channel tuned into a certain frequency. We are all capable of receiving the call when we tune to the spiritual channel. Like your purpose is not to get more information. Your purpose is to keep answering that call over and over again. And yes, it can feel scary and completely illogical at times. Like when I jumped from one career to another and fell flat on my face, or when I left the animation industry before I even got a proper footing. But honestly, I would do it all over again because of all the lessons I've learned along the way. There's no perfect guide, no textbook with all the answers. You just have to show up and say yes when the call comes. These calls can come in many forms. It can be an inner urge, like you keep feeling there's something more to life than the material world. It can be a sense of dissatisfaction, like a growing awareness that your current path is not aligned with your true self. It can also be a feeling of feeling drawn to a specific people, places, or experiences. When you feel inspired to do something, just go for it. Trust that it will lead you to something better than you can imagine. If you ignore the call, the universe will still find a way to get your attention. If I hadn't answered the first call, I'd probably still be an accountant right now, living a pretty standard 3D life. But I'm pretty certain that at 40 years old right now, I will be in a midlife crisis, or I will be like one of my ex-colleagues being retrenched by the company. I'll probably wonder, what if I've taken the risk and gone for something creative, and I might feel regret and depressed. But even then, that regret and suffering will probably push me deeper into my soul and lead me to a spiritual awakening. It would have all led me here eventually. Unless, of course, I kept ignoring the call, then I would just suffer more, kept feeling unfulfilled, kept taking the wrong turns. But eventually, I knew I would still end up having a spiritual awakening. Either way, you always get there. It's really just about whether you want to take the short path or the long one. Because your spirit isn't going to stop calling you back to source. No matter which road you choose, even if it feels like the wrong one, it will eventually bring you back to the spiritual path. It will eventually bring you back to who you truly are. So now I know sometimes it might seem that the universe is throwing obstacles on your path, but it's actually guiding you to your soul's desire. Watch this next video to find out more.